Morning. It is very early on a Saturday, like pre 9 o'clock, but I'm up this early because it's a very exciting day. It is the weekend of the Southwest Booktuber meetup. So today we are in Bath and tomorrow we are in Bristol, and it's very exciting because I get to meet some friends that I have met before and also meet some lovely people who I'm very excited to meet. Today is day 2. I did just try to film a little wrap up of the books that I bought yesterday, but my voice is going, so it didn't sound very good. So I think I'm going to do that at the end. I bought 3 books yesterday, which I think is very modest, but I'm very croaky. So probably best that I don't do too much talking to camera. But anyway, off to Bristol today for day 2 of our big booktuber meetup. So we had the most fabulous weekend, book shopping our hearts out last weekend. It was such a lovely time. I really loved that we did both Bath and Bristol, because doing the 2 days back to back really exposed just how different they are as cities. Like Bath is very classic and Bristol is very cool and hip, and they both have like such different vibes, but I love them both equally. So it was really lovely to spend time in both with the most divine group of people. So I wanted to wrap up by sharing with you the books that I bought. Damage was done. So the first bookshop that we went to was Waterstones in Bath, and I picked up Rabbits for Food by Binnie Kirshenbaum. I like the sound of this because it's about a woman whose mental health is unravelling. It starts at New Year's Eve, and the main character Bunny is celebrating with a really irritating group of friends. This provokes a really extreme reaction in her, and she ends up in a psych ward. It talks about how she then goes on to observe her fellow patients in the psych ward, and says, Rabbits for Food is a brilliant, brutally funny dive into the disordered mind of someone who sees the world all too clearly. I am really loving books that sell themselves as talking about mental health or like gritty topics, but with a lens of humour. So this sounds right up my street. We then went on to an Oxfam, and I found Pigeon by Alys Conran. I don't know much about this book except that it has won one of the previous Wales Book of the Years, and so I would very much like to read it. It's about two young friends who in their childhood come up with these kind of like fantasies, and then I think some of those fantasies kind of like translate into their adult life, something like that. But yes, I want to read it anyway because it's won one of the Wales Book of the Years. We then went to Toppings. I didn't get anything in Toppings. I find Toppings like a really beautiful place to be, but a very overwhelming place to actually shop for books. So I didn't buy anything in there. But when we went on to Persephone, I surprised myself and did buy a Persephone book. I, on principle, don't love books, or publishers rather, because it's their decision, that have like blank covers. So like your Fitzcarraldo editions and Persephone's like that, and especially Persephone because they also don't really have a blurb in them. I really value like finding out something from the book before I enter into like a relationship with it, if you like. There needs to be some communication between the book and I before I think, yeah, I want to invest my time in this. And that's done for me through like what the cover says and how appealing that is to me, and what the blurb says. Like, does that sound like something that I'd be interested in? And so on principle, I was thinking I'm probably not going to get a Persephone book, but went in for the vibes, but then did end up picking something up. So I have got, whoops, wrong way around, Cheerful Weather for the Wedding by Julia Strachey. These are the end papers for this particular Persephone, and I picked up my bookmark that matches. This is about a young woman on the morning of her wedding, and she is having second thoughts, and it kind of implied that various kind of eclectic guests from the wedding kind of pass by, and her reflections on the wedding going forward get more and more interesting as she drinks more and more rum. I thought that sounded like a good time. Jen of Jen the Librarian has read this and said it wasn't, because I think it was described as funny, it wasn't all that funny. So I have my expectations managed going into this one, but I thought this is quite a short novella, so a good one for me to try as a Persephone. I'm more likely perhaps to pick it up because it's a bit shorter than perhaps some of the other chunky ones. So we'll see how we get on with this one. So that was Bath, a modest 3 books. Bristol, on the other hand, damage was done. We started our day in Bookhaus in Bristol, and I haven't been there many times, but every time I go, I just feel really excited and inspired by the collection that they have. And this weekend was like no exception to that. And it's really got me thinking, which I'll perhaps come on to a bit later, but the books that I picked up, first of all, The Definitions by Matt Greene. I'm going to read you the blurb for this one. Nestled in an idyllic locale beside the sea, the centre is a place of rehabilitation and rebuilding. Students arrive nameless, their memories and sense of identity wiped by a strange illness. As shards of memories begin to threaten the strict curriculum of the centre, some students start to question the definitions given to them and explore the ways in which they might define themselves. A stunning, intimately told story about what makes us who we are. The Definitions examines the limits of language, the power of human connection, and the ways the human spirit can flourish even under the most oppressive conditions. So much of this sounds up my street. It's speculative, it's about a sense of identity, it's described as intimately told, I'm feeling character driven. So much about this sounds really fantastic. The next book that I picked up from Bookhaus is Fireweather by Miranda Darling. I was obsessed with this cover. Look how pretty that is. So this was a total cover buy, but it's about a main character who is seeing the world crumbling around her. Like, her husband isn't her husband, her children aren't her children, and there are like fires breaking out and the birds sound like pterodactyls, and her world is basically falling apart. It sounds from the blurb like she's having a mental breakdown, so it's giving unreliable narrator vibes. And it says, in this looking glass world, Winona is forced to prove she is sane, rational. She is a sane, rational human being. As the pronouncements of the professionals grow more insistent, so too do the voices crowding inside Winona's head. She seeks solace in the company of plants and animals, love, and begins to imagine an entirely other way of being, one that might make whole her broken heart. I love the sound of this, and I am obsessed by this cover. The next book I picked up, I confess I don't actually think I read the blurb. It's The Waiter by Kwan Ann Tan. The reason for that being that Ben picked it up, of Ben Reads Good, and was having a little read and said, oh, there's 11 different possible endings. This must be a choose your own adventure book. Well, you know me and book gimmicks, and so I was like, gimme. So that's why I picked it up. It's quite short for a choose your own adventure book, so it'd be interesting to see how that goes. Let's see together what this is about. London, in a not too distant future, the city is being swallowed into the ground. The rich are still getting richer, the waiters do the jobs you don't have time for. They queue for your concert tickets, stay in for your deliveries, and stir your risotto. Step into the shoes of an unnamed waiter who has no recollection of who they were before their role at the company. Now select your next job and decide whether to peek into the client's luggage, or if you'll risk losing work credits by helping a tired woman with her shopping. With 11 different endings and countless journeys towards them, the waiter creates a labyrinth world of possibilities and parallel worlds which combine to explore queer longing, consumerism and agency in a city and a psyche on the brink of collapse. Well, fantastic. I am very excited to read this. I'm gonna want to read that really soon, but that would be a really good one to do a vlog for. Okay, we'll see. That sounds great. And then the last book that I picked up in Bookhaus is Nymph by LaCava. As you can see, I have already started this one. I was very intrigued by this, first of all by the very chic cover, but also because it is about a main character who is a model, a linguist, a Latin scholar, a sex worker, and an assassin. And being an assassin is the family business. So I thought that sounded really fun, but it's also sold as like a literary character study, and I'm really interested to see how that's done in a very short book, with that kind of topic of like being an assassin, which is something that you'd usually associate with being quite plotty. So yeah, I won't tell you what I'm thinking of that so far. Maybe I'll talk about that another time, but yeah, I thought that was very exciting, and as you can see, it's the first book that I picked up. Say no more. And then where did we go next? Then we went on to the Last Bookshop. So the Last Bookshop in Bristol, it actually isn't a million miles away from where I work, which is very dangerous, because it's a bookshop where they sell off like books that are in excess for publishers, and so they sell them off £5 and less. And so it's books that might otherwise kind of like sit in warehouses, or worse, be burned. So I picked up 3 books there. The first of which is The Man Who Planted Trees by Giono. I think this is translated, has to go looking for it, translated from the French by Barbara Bray. And it also has wood engravings in it, and they're by Harry Brockway. Let me see if I can find a lovely wood engraving. Aren't they gorgeous? So this is about a man who kind of uses planting trees and a relationship with nature to help his recovery from the World War. I don't know if it's First World War or Second World War. First World War. 10 years later, after surviving the First World War, he visits the shepherd again. So he plants trees in an area before the war and then goes back afterwards. So it's written in 2 parts. I thought that sounded really lovely. Again, that relationship with nature and that healing power of nature is something that I'm really interested in. It turns out that, so over lunch we were chatting and I said, one of the things that I'd really like to do more of next year is buddy reads. I'd like to do a bit more of that. And Katie from Books and Things was also like, yeah, me too. Let's find something to buddy read. And then later in the day, I picked this up and was showing everybody the books that we got in that shop, and she's like, oh, I bought that earlier. So we have our buddy read, and it's super short, so it's going to be like a lovely cozy kind of like Saturday or Sunday afternoon, whip through it together. So I'm very excited about that. The other book that I picked up in the Last Bookshop is Normal Women by Ainslie Hogarth. I've seen this everywhere on Instagram. It's giving kind of slightly culty, slightly Stepford Wives, kind of like kicking back against that culture. That's kind of what I've taken from the blurb. It talks a lot about like things kind of like appearing to be healthy and stable, but under the surface there's a lot more going on. So and I just love how unsettling this cover is. Amazing. And the last thing that I picked up is Topics of Conversation by Miranda Popkey. Now, funny story. As I was sharing the books that I've bought, Charlie from Charlie Brooke Reads was like, you really like books with like women swimming and in water on the covers. And I was like, And then I had to look at my TBR. I really do. I really do. I didn't know that about myself. So thank you, Charlie, for exposing this about me. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that's about, but she's absolutely right. This is about a woman who leaves a seemingly secure and stable and loving relationship, and explores why that might be in a series of intimate conversations with other women. Say no more. I think that sounds fantastic. So these are the 10 books that I bought at the weekend. I'm very happy with all of them, but it really got me thinking, especially in Bookhaus. As I was saying to you earlier, I was just so inspired in Bookhaus. I love watching BookTube. I've watched BookTube a long time before I started making my own videos. I love watching people talk about books. I love the zeitgeist of really hyped books and watching all of that. I don't necessarily love reading those books. I really like reading books that I've never heard of before and going in completely blind and finding out for myself what they're like without any kind of like outside influence of buzz. So I've noticed a real difference in that I love watching people talk about really hyped books and like the prizes and stuff like that, but for reading I get so excited and inspired by books that I've never heard of, and like picking those up off the shelf, finding something that really sounds like a me book. And that was something that really struck me at the weekend, particularly, as I say, looking around in Bookhaus, because there was this one table I was like, oh, like a kid in a sweet shop, like I could have picked up all of them. And it really got me thinking on the way home, and literally as soon as I got home I was like, right, I'm going through my wish list and I've like culled a load of stuff. And the other thing that struck me was, as we were shopping, I spotted quite a few books that I have at home on my TBR, and it struck me that actually I perhaps wouldn't have bought them at the weekend, and that also kind of got me thinking that I've got a huge physical TBR. I've got a lot of books to choose from, which is lovely, and that's a real privilege. But some of those will have been bought quite a long time ago, and I feel like I have I feel like now I have a much stronger grasp on what my reading tastes are than perhaps I did a couple of years ago, and so I probably was picking up books that other people were really interested in, but perhaps don't necessarily kind of like suit my tastes now. I don't know, it's food for thought, but what I did do is I kind of came home and I went through my wish list and like culled a load of stuff off there. Like if I wouldn't have bought that this weekend, it's going. So I've taken a load of stuff off my wish list, and then I actually went through my TBR. Like I don't like the idea of unhauling things, and I like to read widely, so it's good for me to read a variety of different books, but the physical TBR is a little bit overwhelming when it comes to picking what I'd like to read next. I'm really feeling pulled next year to like choose my own books a bit more. I do a couple of like book clubs, and I also do a couple of reading challenges, and that suddenly feels like I've got 5 books that I don't kind of just choose for myself a month, which is quite a lot. So that's something that I would like to change next year, I think. And so I had a look at my TBR and pulled a load of books out, and I just put them away. So I haven't unhauled them, and I won't unhaul them. So I've just put them away under the bed as a kind of like not right now pile, so that my TBR pile is all just like books. Oh, it's a shelf, not a pile. My TBR shelf is just books that I am really interested in reading. They're all books that I would have picked up and bought over the weekend if I'd have seen them and didn't already own them. So that was just such a helpful little revelation I had at the weekend, I think. And you know, already just kind of like sitting on the sofa and like, do you do that? My TBR bookshelf is in my living room, and so when we're sat on the sofa in the evenings, I just kind of like look over and check out my books and admire them. But I'm looking at that and not feeling overwhelmed now. I'm looking at that and feeling really inspired and excited for my reading, which is how it should be. So yeah, I got so much out of this weekend, so much more than I was expecting to get out of this weekend. It was just really helpful for kind of like being in that space with other readers and around lots of books, to really kind of like be able to think about my reading. Yes. So yeah, so much more than I was expecting. We had a really lovely weekend spending time together. We did some really lovely book shopping, and also I had, you know, all of that great insight. Oh, super. So that's it. It's time to wrap up this vlog. Thank you to all of the fellow booktubers who came to the meetup for being so lovely. I met up with a friend yesterday who's on Instagram. She's not on booktube. But she watches a couple of people, and she was asking like, what's everybody like? I was like thinking about it. So actually most of us are like much more anxious and much shyer, much less confident than perhaps might be apparent, because we sit and chat about books in front of a camera and put that out on the internet. But generally speaking, a lot of us are a wee bit introverted, so throwing us into like group social situations is challenging, but then the flip side of that is that everybody is really lovely and very supportive. So yeah, it's a funny old space is booktube, but it feels very much like home. So anyway, enough waffle from me. Thank you very much for watching. Your time is precious, so I'm grateful to you for spending it with me, and I hope that you are looking after yourself, and I will see you again in the next video.